your first year mentees or mentors? Sorry.
Being that mentor and like being a limit on how much of a friend you can be. So not like being, well, you can be best friends, but not to just jump into that, to be a mentor first.
I recall from my first session that I really had to establish like a line with my mentee, like what was appropriate for us to talk about and what was not, and pretty much what we were going to be going over like through each session, like each week. Because I noticed a lot of times they'll get personal with you sometimes, and sometimes the conversation can like sway from sway off topic. So I try to like let them know, like, if you want to talk about something like that, maybe outside of maybe with one of your friends or outside of your session, and maybe we can.
Yeah, I hear some similarity between what you just stated, what Nick said, having some boundaries.
Well, like the mentee, I don't think personally before I even know them is not really like someone that I'm like I don't really want to meet with them. Like they aren't similar to me. Like all these like things that I thought I wasn't gonna like about them, and then going into the meeting and like just being able to like whatever it is about them, trying to like I guess make it a positive out of everything about them.
Yeah, thank you very much for sharing. Anyone else? Good comments.
So now I would like you to like text what you feel is what you feel your mentee feels is most important in determining a good fit and making sure that they feel that the relationship is safe. So do you feel they're going to be safer and more open if you say are similar in relation to like your major or like your socioeconomic background or maybe some other category? Has everyone got a chance to share? Okay, so a lot of you chose cultural background. Oh, where's it going? Ooh.
Look at a few more moments to for everybody to get their votes in.
Is everyone ready now?
Anybody need additional moment? Good? Okay.
Okay. So a lot of you chose cultural background and major. So would anyone like to elaborate on why you think, say, cultural background or major will be a really major aspect for where your protege will connect with you and feel safe and feel comfortable sharing, and why that you feel that is important to them?
Just an example might be learning methods. So how I might try to teach someone from a different culture, they're not used to learning that way, or maybe they prefer not to learn that way. Maybe they prefer to be taught to a certain way, or so you don't know because we don't understand. That's all.
So you're really speaking on cultural competence,
Yeah.
okay? Okay, which is a legitimate concern, and and some people feel more comfortable being mentored, or if you're a mentor, some mentors may feel more comfortable having someone of the same ethnic background, same race, because of those differences, which really speaks to why we need to be culturally competent, because we don't know who we may end up mentoring, but that's a very, very good point.
I said major because like I'm more knowledgeable of what's expected of them, so I feel like I can help them more and like I understand like kind of like what they're going through a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. Got quite a few hands over here, and I think some over here.
She basically covered it.
Oh, well, that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I said major too, just because, I mean, I think that would make them more comfortable with you with the information you're giving them. Like, they might feel like, well, she's been through these same classes, so it might make them a little more comfortable.
I understand actually, Nick, what he said about cultural background. I think it could extend to major with the learning styles, because like I'm a math major and I have like 20 students up for all different majors that I'm with, and like if I'm a very visual learner and trying to give study skills towards my learning style, like it's hard to to give a lot of examples for really auditory learners or kinesthetic people.
Okay, yes.
So like, just to build study skills as well.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, I was just gonna say that I think it depends on what the goal is for the mentee in the relationship, probably. So it could be if it was more of an academic focus, then major maybe would be more important than cultural background. But if it's more of, I don't know, there's more like social goals depending on what the person's needs are, then maybe it could be something that's more related to gender or cultural background or hobbies or whatever. So.
Okay.
I think you hit on a really great point that really sums up what we're talking, or what we're getting at with this question, is that you really need to be aware of what your mentees' goals are and ask them, and make sure that you're asking them and they're giving you an open and honest answer. Because depending on like what the program is or what their perception of your program is, that could really shape like how they view as a mentor, how they feel, how effective they feel you will be, and also how open they'll want to engage with you in conversation, things like that.
Yeah, all great comments, thank you very much. So we're gonna move forward, and I'd like for you to take a moment or two. We're gonna do the think, pair, share activity again. So either the person to the left or the right or the front or the back of you. Just have a quick conversation. And what do you feel, a mentee or protege, what do you feel what their roles should be in the mentoring relationship, the success of that relationship? Just take about a couple minutes, and then we're gonna come back and have some open discussion about that. Okay, are we ready to come back together? Somebody said, okay, let's give a couple more, another minute, one more minute. Take about 30 more seconds, start summing up your conversation. We're going to have some open discussion. Okay, so let's come back together.
So he can like put himself in the shoes of the mentee and like understand what he's going through. And then one for the mentee would be to be open-minded, not be entrenched in his own views. Like if if he can see that what he's doing is not working and accept some of the mentor's advice.
Okay, okay. Had you seen this presentation?
No.
The last thing we had was to come in with a positive attitude. Don't come in thinking, well, this mentee is a different major, so, you know, maybe he won't understand what I'm gonna be teaching him.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Both of you, actually.
Okay, well, I had said that, it's kind of like the whole horse, like you can take the horse to the water, but you can't force him to drink.
Mhm.
So if like the mentee doesn't want my help, like doesn't wanna take the skills I'm helping them with and trying to show them and like make them relevant to their lives, like it's obviously not gonna do anything good.
Okay,
We talked about the same thing.
okay, all right. Over here, comments.
Alright,
Yes.
so in my mentoring, it's kind of it's a mandatory requirement that they attend the session for the class. So that kind of brings in the issue of, I don't wanna be here because it's mandatory.
Mhm.
So basically what I do is that I set ground rules at the beginning, like even if you don't wanna be here, that's okay, I still ask that you participate, because some people might wanna be here. It's a group session, and if you participate in the group work, it's gonna help your peers, even though that you might wanna be here, so.
Do you find that particularly challenging to get them to participate?
Depends on the semester.
Mhm.
There's a possibility some of you might want to be here, so don't mess it up for them. Yeah.
Okay.
So like this semester, since it's the off semester for my course, it's usually return like higher up students. So they're a little more reluctant, but last semester there was new students, so they were a little bit more willing to go for the group work.
Okay, okay, excellent. One or two more over here? Yes.
We talked about active listening, really the mentors should have more of the active listening part,
Mhm.
listen to the mentee. We also discussed to articulate the change, because sometimes change happens and one person or the other doesn't know the change happens. So keeping that open line of communication is essential. And then we also talked about silence, because sometimes silence, although you're talking, being quiet is okay. Because there's that time that void doesn't need to be filled with anything. It's just a time to reflect.
Process.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So, and that's a very good point. Silence is not always a bad thing. It's sometimes the person needs to take an opportunity to process, to think, to reflect, and that can be very fruitful in terms of, you know, what a person can bring to the relationship. You don't necessarily want a person just jumping in and shooting from the hip, because that may not be appropriate either. Okay?
No,
Just agree.
I'm sorry.
Okay, so just a couple of things real quick. Just the mentee-mentor roles and responsibility. Having the mentee be responsible for, or have an understanding of what their roles are in the relationship can go a long way in having a very fruitful and successful mentoring relationship. Each of you understanding your respective roles, I think, is more important to establish at the very beginning, okay, than try to rectify or correct later on in the relationship. So, how do they look? How will the roles and responsibilities of both the mentor and the mentee, how will they look? So we have a table we're gonna go to in a moment, and just focusing on the mentee. Turn it over to Felicia, she's gonna take us to the next slide.
So essentially, this is a list of roles that we put between the mentee and the mentor. By no means is this all inclusive. I know there's a lot more that you can probably think of if we had more time, but essentially they're all relate to each other. So your mentee, you want them to be able to articulate what their interests are. And then as a mentor, this allows you to actively listen to them and facilitate like them in pursuing those interests and reaching out to resources that would actually be beneficial to them. Also with like articulating their goals, you want to, as a mentor, it is our job to evaluate and assess them and make sure that they're getting places. But you can't do that if your mentee can't articulate what their goals are, or even articulate what their concerns are in relation to their classes. So if for academic mentors, if your mentee never tells you that, say this class is stressing me out, or I'm having trouble understanding XYZ concept, that inhibits you from actually being able to perform your job. And so it's important for them to know that, hey, you are responsible for telling me when you're having concerns. You're responsible for telling me if you have a goal, that way I can help you achieve it. And the list continues with all the other ones. Another one is being accountable and being responsible. You want to make sure that they know they are accountable to themselves and you, and they should be responsible for their actions and making sure that this relationship is successful. So I think those are two of the most important ones. And if you, in the initial meeting with them, could establish that with them and have this conversation, it can make your relationship a lot more fruitful. So we're going to continue. And so we're going to do another poll. So of these mentee roles, which one have you had the most trouble with getting your mentee to actually perform?
Be honest.
As a mentor or like, what do you?
So essentially, say I'm a mentor and I have a group of mentees. What do I have trouble getting them to do? Am I having trouble getting most of my mentees to provide facts? Am I having trouble getting them to be accountable for things? What you as a mentor, what are you having trouble or have had the most trouble getting your mentees to actually do?
Keep in mind, these are the qualities or the roles that they should be playing or bringing to the relationship.
Okay. So, does anyone need any more time? So, anyone else? Okay. So we're tied for being responsible and following through. And I know this can be a really big thing because I know as mentors, both academic and social mentors, you give resources to your mentees and you tell them, hey, you need to go here if you have this trouble, or oh, this is a really good opportunity for you, but they don't follow through. And it'll be 3 weeks later and you'll be like, hey, did you go do X, Y, Z? And they're like, nope, what was that resource again? So essentially, if you know that these are the troubles you're having with your mentee, or the greatest troubles you're having with your mentees as a whole, maybe this is where, oh, it's changed even more. Maybe these are points where you as a mentor need to like focus and be more attentive to having actual conversations with them. And maybe that means having an extended conversation with all of your mentees saying, hey, like, we're going to talk about following through, and this is what I'm going to hold you accountable for. This is what your responsibility is in a relationship. You need to follow through. And maybe for others, I know some people said it was, say, articulating goals or articulating concerns. Maybe for you as a mentor, this is where you need to be like, hey, we're going to sit down and have a discussion because the mentees, or maybe you don't have to say this to them, but you can have this internal monologue saying, hey, this is where I've had problems getting my mentee to perform a certain role. So I need to be more active about engaging them in this active role and making sure that in the future they're following through and actually performing and filling this role.
Does anybody want to comment on any of these? Yes.
It's especially hard when you've got those mentees that won't accept responsibility, that they're the reason they're in that position. So I find it best to, when people are like that and they feel like it's someone else that got them in the position that they're in, where they actually need mentoring and they have to come mandatory. I find it best to walk them through the steps that got them to that point, to help them realize that each tiny ripple led to where they are now.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a very useful skill that I never thought about before, but yeah, that could be a very good skill to use for difficult mentees.
And a very nice integration of Ripple into the theme of the conference, by the way. DeAndre.
I voted for being resourceful.
Okay.
A lot of the times I see like freshmen, and I was actually one of these type of freshmen. I see them like just go to class and then just go back to their dorms. I try to encourage them to maybe like take advantage of some of the resources around campus. Like particularly, I'm over like the Black Male Initiative aspect of the mentoring, so So I try to not try to, I mentor like all African Americans.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to persuade them or push them to actually utilize the resources that are available to them. Like if some of them have financial issues, I'll tell them to go to the student support services and apply for book vouchers or tuition waivers, and I try to make them aware of all of the opportunities that are available to them, like even jobs. So I try to push them towards that. And a lot of the times they they take it in, but they still are kind of they walk with their heads down, and I try to discourage them as much as possible.
Then he said walk with their head.
Their heads down, like they're not
Heads
being
down.
observant, they're not meeting new people. They're being robots back and forth to class to dorms. And that's not a good way to live college life.
No. Okay, thank you.
I was gonna say, I feel like volunteer and being responsible kind of goes together, because I think the mentee needs to understand that if you ask them to do something for your next session and they don't do it, they're not really hurting us, they're hurting themselves, and they're wasting both of our times. So you're kind of helping them out and doing them a favor, and if they don't take advantage of that, then they're the ones that are gonna be hurt in the end. So following through is kind of on them.
Would anyone else like to add anything before we move on? Okay. So essentially our next one is establishing goals. So just by a show of hands, how many of you have been in a relationship with a mentee where it just felt stagnant, like you weren't getting anywhere, they didn't feel like they were making progress, and it was just, you're stuck? Okay, we have 3. That's cool. Just continuing on with that, okay, the biggest thing you need to remember about goals is that only your mentee can set goals. You can tell them goals and give them ideas of goals, but in the end, if you're just telling them and they don't actually believe it, then the relationship is going nowhere and they're not actual goals. They're just empty statements in the air. So whenever you are in a relationship with a mentee, it is important for them to establish goals and you to actively facilitate that process. So essentially asking them, what are your goals? What do you want to get out of the college experience? What do you want to get out of the relationship with me? And also, it's good for you to make sure that whatever goals they do set are SMART goals, that they are realistic, that they are achievable, they are time bound, because often freshmen, they come into college with these really big, grand ideas, but they fail to realize that there are a lot of small steps that will lead you to the grander goal, and that are a lot more accomplishable, and it'll keep you staying positive too. If you help them make sure that their goals are achievable, SMART, time-bound, and something realistic and achievable. So that would be our first point. Alright. So goals set the tones and the standards of the relationship. So if there are goals, you're going to be more successful. If there aren't goals, you're going to be stagnant, and both of you are going to be confused about what you want out of the relationship. 2. So mentees should be responsible for setting goals and going to the meeting. So make sure that they feel accountable and responsible for meeting with you, and also that they personally feel accountable for whatever goals they achieve for themselves or set for themselves. And 3, follow through to assess their goals and make sure they're accomplished. A lot of times, mentees set goals, but over time they tend to forget about them. And in that process, if say a mentee sets a goal for themselves and then they have a big upset, and you can be that person to say, hey, yes, this is a small failure, but look at all these other small steps you made to achieve progress, and that this is only a minor setback, but not an end. So if you're constantly setting goals and having this process of making a record for positive growth in them, then they're more likely to overall see your relationship with them as a positive, no matter what failures or setbacks may come.
So, qualities of a successful mentoring relationship. Now we're getting kind of to the nitty gritty, to the nuts and bolts of this particular session here. Coming up, I'm going to show you a series of images, this being one of them. Okay? And I want you to take a look at these images and just what comes to mind. You know, say for instance, this one right here, it's like couple having the cold shoulders, lack of communication. Next. Okay, I'm gonna read this to you because I understand it's kind of difficult, but you can see that there's the person, the woman is whispering something into the gentleman's ear, and he's saying, I wonder what she says about me when I'm not around. Okay, next. And next, it wasn't me. Talking about that lack of accountability, that's what comes to my mind. Next. Okay, so now, what I'd like for you to do is text which image best represents the relationship with your mentee.
What was the third one?
It wasn't me, this one? Oh, this one. This one. Okay. Balance, harmony.
So with this one, we don't want you to like be envisioning what your ideal relationship is. We want you to go off based off your experience you've had now. What is generally a picture that represents the positives and negatives of the relationships you've had.
I have 20 people that.
Hmm?
I have 20 students that I work with. I don't know
Oh,
how to answer that.
pick one.
What do they generally lean towards? Do you have would you say a larger percentage are towards one image or a larger percentage are towards another?
That first image, you really speak to communication, lack of communication. Relationship may be kind of cold. Perhaps the second image, you might have a mentee that talks a whole lot and not necessarily about the right kinds of things. The third image, being an image of harmony and balance. And then the hand says it wasn't me. So you might think of that as a lack of accountability, blaming, not my fault. Everyone finished?
It's 23. That's how many answers.
Okay, so let's have some conversation. We have enough time. We can go through each other. Let's start with this one. I take this one as everybody's relationship with their mentees perfect. Is that right? So let's hear some comments on this one right here. Yes.
Okay, so I did that one, but it's not because I consider my relationships with them perfect.
Mm-hmm.
One reason is because, like someone said over there, I have a lot of mentees, so it's a little bit of everything.
Okay.
So I might experience with like 2 or 3, the one at the top where it seems like we're not really connecting sometimes, or honestly, I don't see too much of the second one, and the fourth one with accountability. It seems like for the most part my mentees know when they mess up, and they don't really blame anyone else. They just don't really like show like any type of remorse. You understand?
Yeah.
Where I'm coming from? Like so with the balance thing, like with my relationships with my mentees, it's usually like positive. So that's the reason why.
That's all right. Yeah, that's good. Let's hear some more. I'm interested. Yes.
With the balance side of it, kind of took it to me knowing when to be there to back off.
Okay.
I had a mentee in the past who actually told me she was getting annoyed because I talked to her too much. And I mentor for the honors program, so that might be part of it. She was pretty self-sufficient.
Okay.
But with the balance, it's figuring out, okay, when do I need to be there so that I'm not ignoring her, and when do I need to let her kind of figure things out on her own.
Okay. Yes.
I actually chose the first one because like a lot of my students who are required to be there, like they just are like, it's so a lot of times so hard to just engage them or make them wanna succeed or anything. They just kind of tell me the bare minimum that they have to tell me kind of thing.
Yeah. How are things going? Fine. Okay, how does that look? It's fine, okay. All right, let's go to the next image. All right, and what we're gonna do is, this is my opportunity to play David Letterman here, okay? So I have the 10 habits of a challenging mentee, okay? The 10 habits. Except I'm not going in David Letterman's order, so. But anyway, we're gonna have some discussion on each of these, or maybe I'll have you pick out which one really stands out to you. Okay, so the first one is shopping list. Okay, so when you come in contact with your mentee for the first time, they have just a long, sundry list of items they want you to take care of, right? Okay, number 2, 24-hour access. They can call you 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning when they need something, right? Number 3, gossip. Number 4, expect you to always have the answer. Number 5, lack of contributing. 6, lacks discretion. Number 7, plays the blame game. How about number 8? Whiny. Number 9, non-committal. How about number 10? Does not question. Okay? So, my question to you is, have you, and if you have, which one of these have you experienced during the course of your relationship with your mentees? Yeah.
I guess does not question, so like I feel like if someone's giving me advice about something, I'm gonna be like, and if it doesn't exactly like work with me, I'm gonna say, well, what about this? A lot of times they'll just like take in what I'm telling them or suggestions I'm making, and then they're not questioning them. I can't like alter them to fit them perfectly.
Okay, okay. Take what we're gonna do. I'm gonna kind of switch it up a little bit. I want you to do the think, pair, share again. I'm gonna take a couple minutes. I want you to kind of form your little groups again, if you would please, and just take a couple minutes and have some discussion around these 10 elements here. Okay, and we'll come back and have some open discussion. For an hour or 2 or 3 or for a week or 2, but it's actually, in order for it to really work, it has to be sustainable. In order for it to be sustainable, you have to meet over at least, I don't know what your program requires, maybe it's a year, maybe 6 months. DeAndre, how long is your
It all depends. So it's for like every incoming freshman, they have to go through this program pretty much. And it's like 90 minutes like each week.
for the semester or for a year?
For the semester, but if they end up like on academic probation, like regardless of the academic coaching, then they have to actually go another semester through the coaching as well.
Okay. But the point is that it's a commitment. Number 2, please. Flexibility. Okay. So they have to be flexible in terms of not just meeting, okay, but in case things aren't working out, the method or the goals, they have to be flexible enough to realize that they need to have a change in strategy. Okay, so if there's a lack of flexibility there, there's a potential problem. Number 3, mentoring is but one tool for development. Okay, one of the things you want to do is emphasize to your mentees that you're not the only resource there for them. Okay, there are other resources that they should be taking advantage of. That's going to help them to learn. It's going to help them throughout their undergraduate career. Number 4, openness. Okay, this is a big one. Okay, I call this the attitude category here, because sometimes mentees can get really upset when you're giving them good information. You're trying to help them. Okay, and sometimes you have mentees who might get an attitude, or they might object. And if you have an attitude, if you have a mentee that constantly objects or bring negative attitudes, they're not open to trying new strategies, new approaches, or they're not open to what you have to say, they're kind of closed-minded, that doesn't make for a very fruitful relationship. And number 5, ability to listen, and there we go, accept varying viewpoints.
Can you go back for a second, please?
Yep. Anybody else want to take a picture? Go right ahead. Can I get in it?
Okay, thank you.
And by the way, that's a very good point. I'm going to give these to Landon Brothers, who's one of the coordinators, and they will put them on the conference website, so you'll have access to the slides.
Okay.
Yep.
So, to close out this portion of our presentation, we want to make sure that you get, you know, that we're not trying to say that there are good mentees that you should love and they're awesome people, and that there's bad mentees and there's awesome people. All mentees, they're young, they're predominantly freshmen or transitional students, so they all have their ups and downs, places where they're like really well developed and other places where they need help and assistance in growing. So don't put labels on your mentees if they're bad or good. Always try to, if they are lacking, say they're not as responsible, just try to help them grow in that area. And make sure, you want to make sure that you're helping your mentee grow and that they are being consistent as far as like when they're meeting with you, in responding to your emails or like information, say like you said, updates about when assignments are due, that they're looking at that on a consistent basis, and that they're informing you of their progress on a consistent basis, making sure that they're giving you honest information about how they're doing, or if they're doing good or well or bad, or however they're doing. Also, that they're being open and receptive to whatever information you're giving them, or resources, or even just campus life in general, because some mentees tend to, like you said, they're robotic and they just go, and they're not open to the whole experience of being in college and learning and growing. You want them to be accountable and follow through, so that be that with meeting with you, meeting with other people, or just going to class, making sure in all aspects they feel accountable for their success or failures, and that they are following through in all their endeavors. Be reflective, that they're consciously reflecting on their progress, and that they're positive about this reflection. You always want to make sure your mentees are positive about whatever they're doing, because positivity breeds success. And then seeking and developing their cultural capital. So this goes into like making sure that only are they engaged with you, but they're engaged in the classroom, they're engaged with their peers, and that they're seeking opportunities to help themselves grow professionally, socially, and academically. Continue. So strategies for success. Ooh. Okay. So you want to make sure that you're collaborating with your mentee and that you're not dictating to them. Because as mentors, we tend to want to give advice rather than ask probing questions and see what their insight is and help them to actually solve their own problems. Because we don't want to enable them, we want to empower students. So your mentors should be working with you to identify their issues and concerns. So you shouldn't go into a meeting saying, hey, you're failing chemistry. You should be like, let them talk about it. See how they feel about the class, and maybe that could be the real issue, and you're not jumping to conclusions about what their problems are. And then you're mutually working to solve them, so that you're not just giving them answers, because that does not help them grow, that does not empower them to find their own answers. You want to make sure that you're helping them seek answers, and that they're helping you solve their problems. Plan and implement strategies. You want to make sure that they're implementing strategies and that you're giving them the outlines and the tools to solve problems and do problem solving on their own. And that you are making sure that they have some assessment for success, so that they have a plan to say, hey, how do they know if they're actually doing good in the class? How do they know? So say some mentees, if it's a class, they'll get a bad grade on a homework assignment or a test, and they tend to think it's the end of the world. So you want to be there to make sure that they have some kind of realistic means of measuring their success, be it in a class or social setting or whatever they deem their goal to be, and that you are helping them to gauge that success and use whatever tool you gave them to assess their success.
And just one more thing, when it comes to being open, and I think Felicia touched on it, it's really important that they're open with their fears as well, what their issues and what their concerns are. If they're not open with that, there's no way you can help them. Okay? Matter of fact, you could be doing more damage than good. But they need to be open with whatever their fears are, whatever their concerns, whatever issues or challenges that they're having. They need to be honest with you in that regard. So we have some time for questions. about 3 minutes, 4 minutes?
I'd say like
1 minute? Okay.
Your program is one-on-one mentoring, right?
No, our students have anywhere from 5 to 7 mentees or proteges assigned to them, depending upon whether they're a veteran peer mentor or they're a novice, they're first year.
I'm curious to know, how many people in this room have more than 7 student mentors? That explains a lot. Okay, thank you.
What does it explain? I want to know.
That is too, the mentor load is too heavy for that, for a student. You cannot possibly mentor more than 7 and be a student yourself in an education environment, especially if they're freshmen. Freshmen require more time. That mentoring period should only be 1 to 5. That's national.
Yeah, that's national?
That's national day.
With us, it's, well,
Some of us it's tied to a course, so we kind of lead a session of the course.
Regardless, it's still, the mentoring piece should not be that many. You're still mentoring in some regard, whether it's tutoring, mentoring, academic, mentoring, peer mentoring.
so I'm going, I hate to do this, but I do have to have a few minutes for you to fill out your evaluations. Appears like, I think I went over maybe by a minute or 2, I apologize. So if you could please fill out.
This is my card. I'm Dr. Burkhope's Kevin, please. I prefer Kevin much more than doctor. Never got used to the doctor thing. So what you're here for and what we're going to talk about is mathematics-specific mentoring. So there's a difference, right? When you talk about content and you talk about what it means to be a mentor, we believe in holistic approaches to tutoring and mentoring, especially those of us that work at the Math Assistance Center, which is where I'm the director. We believe in those sorts of things, but this is a more nuanced way of thinking about what mentoring and tutoring looks like in the content of mathematics, okay? Make sense? Are you excited? Are you excited?
Sure.
This is my excited face. So what I'm gonna do, since it's such a small group, is that we'll work a little bit together on some ideas, if that's all right with you. And then, instead of me just doing a boring linear PowerPoint, okay? Does that sound fair? Okay. Is that what you want me to do? Okay, so the first thing is, I want to ask you guys a question. So you are here for a particular reason. Maybe, well, how many of you are mentoring mathematics specifically? Or tutoring mathematics specifically? Okay, so why are you guys here?
My degree is in special education, English, and mathematics, so I kind of thought it would be
Good.
kind of helpful.
Fantastic. I hope you find it is. Why are you here?
I actually lead PLTL, but I was interested in hearing a different subject material.
Very good. So the idea is that you will find, I hope, that I'm much different than what you're used to as far as a research PhD in mathematics. The idea is that I care immensely about the teaching of mathematics and the research mathematics, both. So this is more of the aspect of what it means to teach the content that I love so much. So the first thing that you need to think of is this, okay? When you think of math, what are the first things that come to mind? So maybe if you've got a piece of paper or something on the back side that you can write down some ideas of what comes to mind when you think of the discipline of mathematics. Okay, images, metaphors, analogies, anything that comes to mind when you think of what this discipline is. Think of your own student, if you want to call it training, your own learning, when you work with students, or anything in between. What comes to mind? So what comes to mind?
Like functions, graphs,
Okay.
different shapes,
Functions, graphs, shapes, concepts. What comes to your mind?
like numbers, logic, theory.
Numbers, logic, theory? What do you guys?
I come up with numbers and applications of life.
Okay, applications of life.
Graphs.
Graphs. What else?
Like the steps to find solutions.
Steps to find solutions. What about you?
I said equations.
Equations. Now, notice what just happened. If you can, think about when I said when you think about math, but you came up with are concepts of math. right? What I'm thinking more of is, how does it relate to you? How does it make you feel? Okay, because it turns out that when you teach and when you're a student, how you feel about a subject impacts how well you do in it. Have you ever heard that before? So people that have certain dispositions towards mathematics, ones that are relatively negative, often do worse at the subject matter than if you would have positive. And then the same thing with passion, right? If you're passionate about something, regardless of innate natural ability, you tend to do better at it. Does that make sense? So how does math make you feel? Try that. And don't hedge your bets here. Tell the truth. How does it make you feel? You want to start, Sim? How does it make you feel?
It depends on what kind of math you're doing. There's some math that's very comfortable.
Okay.
And then there's math that scares me a little bit.
Interesting.
So, just depends.
Okay, that's fair.
Depends. Just
Depends?
as Imran said.
Okay, can you give me a couple of words of the depends on one side or the other?
It could get me tired. It could get me excited. It could get me wanting to be involved and to get involved sometimes.
Okay.
I said scared and sometimes intelligent.
Okay. Scared. Scared's come up a couple of times. What about you? Make you feel smart? Interesting. What about you?
I put a mix of creative, sometimes it makes me angry, frustrated, smart.
Interesting. What about you?
I'd say neutral a lot of the time.
Neutral a
Just
lot of the
kind
time?
Kind of in between.
Okay. Why can you say neutral? What sort of a balance happens?
I mean, sometimes there are problems that are difficult, but a lot of times they're like not so difficult, so it's kind of like it's an in-between usual.
Interesting. Okay, so I've been doing this sort of a talk for many years, and I teach some of my coursework this way. I teach future teachers how to teach math. And here's some images I'm going to share with you that come up, okay? This is supposed to be a little bit, at least reasonably funny. But since it's only you guys, it takes away a little bit of the charm, right? So here's the first one. Scary, right? That's a gigantic spider in your face.
Oh.
Yeah, that's terrifying.
Oh my
Now that you know what it is, it's even more terrifying. Yeah, that makes me want to vomit. How about you? Okay, so then we got the terrified snakes thing, frozen in fear, right? Or the dentist. Everybody loves that. That terrifies me.
So much.
Okay, so I oftentimes, when I give this talk, I give it to different cohorts of students. It comes where I have students that love the discipline and also students that find themselves disengaged from it for some reason. These are the same types of students that you're going to find yourself tutoring and mentoring, which is why I bring it up. And then also we have the cohorts and the things that you described too, right? So maybe it's something like this, right? Makes you feel all warm and fuzzy inside, right? Teddy bears and puppies and kittens and babies. Can you go wrong with any of those? Absolutely not. Okay? And then you got like, it's easy, I can, it's a piece of cake, metaphorically speaking. You have these sorts of metaphors that come out. Or rainbows and butterflies, right? Unicorns, yeah. And this one, for various reasons, always makes people laugh. But the truth is that you all feel this, right? Okay. Now you have to keep in mind that how we think about something and how we feel about it comes out in our teaching, because you teach who you are. So you will teach mathematics in a particular way based upon who you are. You can't just teach a discipline. That's not true, because your interpretation of what math is different than somebody else's. You will teach your math to other people, and that's powerful, meaning that you have a lot of power. Does that make sense? Have you ever thought about it that way? Why not?
Wait, repeat it.
Yeah. So the idea is that you have an immense amount of power, because the mathematics that you are representing with the students that you work with, and this is included with myself, and I've taught every level of math. So I've taught kindergarten through high school. I taught kindergarten, middle school, high school, and then I've taught graduate level, undergraduate level mathematics included. So I've taught all the different levels, and there's an immense amount of power there, right? When you're chasing third graders and teaching them math, it's the same power as when you're teaching undergraduate math, because you're representing a discipline to a group of people, and their access to that discipline is through you. You're a channel. It's the same concept when you're tutoring. Okay, does that make sense? So you have a lot of power when you are a teacher. So think about that when you're doing it. So go ahead and read this and see what you think. Something of what we just described. Make sense? Sometimes this is lost in the translation when people are talking about teaching. That you don't quite realize how much power you have over a discipline and how it's represented. Because again, there is no true math. There is only the teacher's representation of that for a student and then the student's interpretation of it. Maybe sounds a little complicated, but it's the truth. Okay? Textbooks are not math. It's somebody's interpretation of math. Somebody just like me or just like you wrote a book. And that book we think is math, but it's not. Okay, does that make sense? Are you sure? Anybody disagree with me yet? I would love disagreements. Okay. All right, so here's what we're going to do. Since we have such a small group, you think we'll start at something reasonably easy. I promise you I'm going to ask you questions about this level of topic that is going to make this run into the land of incredibly complicated. Okay? So first, I always give you answers to questions that are difficult, so don't worry about that. I don't care about your mathematical ability and whether or not you have some sort of prowess when it comes to this. What I want to know is, how would you teach a topic? And then we're going to diagnose whether or not there's a different way of thinking about it. Is that fair? Okay, so if somebody came to you and said, I don't know how to multiply fractions, which actually, in the C1, C2 level, we see that quite a bit, don't we? Okay, C1, C2 is, these two work for me at the Math Assistance Center. And C1, C2 is the first two levels of calculus. And one of the things that we see most often at that level is that students don't know how to find common denominators and multiply fractions. It's a pervasive problem. Okay? But maybe there's something to it. So let's kind of figure that out. So if you're okay with it, I'd like you three to work together and figure out a way that you would teach this concept. Is that fair? So introduce yourself to each other and figure out whether or not you can do that. I'd like you three to do the same thing, introduce yourself to each other, and see if you could come up with a way to teach this concept.
I'm Bree. I'm Simran.
When you are done, I will distribute writing mechanisms to you, markers, and you write them on the board. Good catch. So right here, you would just kind of write what it is that you would do to teach this, okay? And then over here, you guys do the same. And then we'll see what we come up with.
I never understood how to
Kind of compare them and see how they're similar.
Great.
I'll be practice.
So right there. Remember, there's no wrong answers to these
Then I think I'm
questions.
gonna try to draw like.
Rarely in a class that I teach is there ever such thing as a wrong answer.
Well,
Do you know?
here was three, six, quadrants of the circle.
I'm not a good
And then opposite is gonna be what?
I like to write big,
Yeah.
so I like
Ah.
big.
Because that's one of the.
So
Gotta work
what
on
do
your
we
teacher
start?
right, right?
Oh my gosh.
Gotta work on
Wait,
it.
I'm so afraid
I'm gonna
to
be
like
like
writing on the board. They're like, "What's that say?"
Because it will happen.
So
when you say
we're
one
gonna
of
group
them,
them, right?
and you change it to math,
One
you just,
time
you're just writing out what you're saying
at
to
least
yourself
like
how,
in the PLTR
but not in
class,
English.
like I bring
So when
like,
you look
it's
at
basically,
math,
they
you
just
can
kind of
say
work
it
in
out.
small groups.
Just
and I
say it out,
just
just
help
stand
them
up each
whenever.
Is it one
I have
half?
like a little
Yep,
whiteboard
one half
I
times
walk
two.
around with, and I show them
So,
things.
half, three, what is what?
Are you about to say?
Yeah,
Oh my gosh, one time,
three,
it was in high school.
Those
My
three quadrants. So that's
teacher
one,
was writing
and then
down
half of
something.
one quadrant. So
Do we
I'll
wanna
write
do it by
Trying to
letters?
one half of four.
What?
Do we wanna do like group A and group B?
Sure.
So I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's kind of.
Very special with it as well. One of four.
Because it depends on the student. If pictures so you draw a circle and then break down pieces, or if they have numbers.
And
break
then,
down.
Yeah, it depends
So-
on the student.
and then
Yeah,
just
some
put, like,
students
A
will
over
probably
B.
prefer like, well,
yeah.
I need to multiply there like that. I need to work with the numbers, and some people are like seeing like a B, for example. So firstly, I would write out first, and if it doesn't work, then I would go on to very circle.
You don't want them to.
Yeah. Very circle.
But then what if it's too big of a fraction?
Yeah.
And
Other example.
Okay, just write one up
Okay, so
there.
just do like 1/2 times 3/4 equals 3/8.
What'd you say?
Or other example. Oh,
Ah.
yeah, go ahead and,
Because
go ahead
that's
and compare,
obviously
like,
the French option, you know?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just
Over 3
2
3
over,
over 4.
yeah. 2/3 over, or wait, okay. Give me another one. 4
Where are you from?
over 5.
Where?
Were you saying 5?
Fantastic.
That worked.
Very good. Where you studying? Nice. Very nice. What do you want to do with that?
I want to be a network administrator.
Okay. Is that about getting into database management or big data or anything like that?
Not so much. The main focus of it is telecommunications and
I know, like,
network.
my
Very good.
Yeah.
You gonna be able to write your own ticket in that field? We can't find enough people to do the jobs, so.
Yeah.
So a second example. You innovators.
That's right.
Overachievers.
Okay, so I think we'll have enough time to actually do all of these. So what I'm gonna do is show you a second and a third task. And it's not the right or wrong that we're after, okay? There's no such thing. You may not believe that in math. Some people think that math is so wonderful because there's always a right and wrong answer. That's the height of lunacy. That's not true, okay? Because 2 plus 3 only equals 5 in our number system. You can do 2 plus 3 equals 1 in a modular arithmetic or something else. There's no such thing as right and wrong answers. There's right and wrong perspectives, okay? Now, if you believe that, that takes away some of the power that math has over people, where they say, it makes me feel good because I can always find that one answer that's right. It's just not the way it is, okay, from my perspective. So, there are no right and wrong answers when it comes to the teaching of math either. So the second one that I want to show you, and this is a little bit more in depth mathematically, but not much. How would you teach this topic? Do you remember factoring?
Yeah.
Okay, so factor completely. This is an addition of perfect cubes. So how do you factor an addition of perfect cubes? If you don't remember, you got a smartphone, Google it, right? That's what teachers do all the time. So if you don't remember, figure it out, and then tell me how you would teach it. Fair? Okay, so I'm gonna actually raise this screen for just a second so that we can record these answers as well.
That's right.
Because
It's just that, no, is it?
no,
No, it's another.
it's a positive and a negative.
Yeah,
Somewhere.
you're fine. This is what we did there. The probability in the middle is 0.
So it would be 3 times. Got a bunch of stuff. It's a positive and a negative. That's what I mean.
Back up, we'll get moving forward. What I want you to think about is, how did doing these topics or doing these slight tasks, how did they make you feel? Okay? So go back to ones that you knew were easy, compared to ones that you knew were more difficult, and then now maybe one that I have up here, which is solve a system of equations in 2 variables that involves conic sections and other things. How does that make you feel comparatively? Is that fair? So think about that. If you have something where you're writing these things down, go ahead and write them down and see what you think and how it made you feel going from ones that you potentially know to something that you potentially don't.
How did we feel?
Did you guys get like a
Well,
notebook
it was good when
from the
we were-
midterm symposium,
maybe
or is that
figure
your
the first
personal
one out.
notebook?
I know.
So.
I thought it was right up for.
You thought they were preaching,
Yeah.
huh?
forgetful.
I know you would. They're not clipping around.
That's Kevin, I know.
Yeah, right. I should have.
That's Kevin, the teacher today.
That's right. It's too bad you don't have one anymore, because this one's mine. Okay, so,
I don't have my.
tell me your feelings, okay? You didn't know you were gonna come to a math talk and have to talk about feelings, but what was the transition?
I literally left the emotions on.
Yeah, you did, right? You were hoping this would be less of that. So what did you experience working your way through it? Why don't you three individually, collectively, what did
We
you feel?
felt good when we knew how to do the first one, and then when we